Welcome back, listeners to Learning from Friends. My name is Kay Curtis, your tour guide in this lovely adventure that we get to do bi-weekly together. And today, you guys are in for a treat and a half. I have got these two amazing musicians that are going to tell us about their story and their journey, where they are right now in their lives and all they've been doing leading up into this point. And I'm not going to spoil everything until we get into the topic itself, but I'm getting ahead of myself because right now we have my mom's quote of the day that we've got to do first. So, Mom, to lead us into this episode, get us off on the right foot, give us that quote of the day.
Thanks to the Field Sparrow, whose voice is so delicate and humble, by Mary Oliver. I do not live happily or comfortably with the cleverness of our times. The talk is all about computers. The news is all about bombs and blood. This morning in the fresh field, I came upon a hidden nest. It held 4 warm speckled eggs. I touched them, then went away softly, having felt something more wonderful than all the electricity of New York City.
Mom, that was perfect. I think you set us off on the right foot. We're sailing in the right direction. And now we're going to get this things going. And I've got these two guests, Julie and Josh Kinn. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here.
Now, the majority of this audience is new to these two individuals that is called Kinnfolk. And I would like you just to give us a little bit of a background, maybe like a Wikipedia page or some highlights and some joys of this journey that you two are on right now.
Sure. We're a Celtic music duo, and we're based out of Roanoke, Virginia. We've performed together for just about 6 years now.
Wow, it is almost 6 years.
Time flies, man. You never know.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah, and we do primarily Irish and Scottish traditional music, but we have some stylistic influence from Appalachian old time as well.
Mm-hmm. I would say something to know about us. As you said, our name is Kinnfolk. That's Kinnfolk, because we're punny people. Ken is our last name. We're a married couple.
You got to have the good joys in life like that, where you can be able to mix the two worlds together and also be able to create a really cool, catchy name too at the same time.
A little wordplay never hurt anybody.
It's actually part of our proposal story.
Yes.
Ooh.
We needed to change our band name, and I had been hinting, we could call ourselves Kinnfolk. It would be perfect if only I were your sister.
Or your wife.
I like it. I like it.
We were going by a different name. We called ourselves Baron and Luthien at the time, which is obscure Tolkien reference.
I want to say that I feel Tolkien there. I feel it. Yeah.
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 People were really into it if they were really into, that type of fantasy.
But if they didn't know Tolkien, they're like Bergen and Lithium?
Yeah, Baron and Lithium was my favorite one.
Yeah.
Yes, we're a chemistry duo.
Perfect.
And on the day that I proposed, we discussed changing the name, and we did so shortly after, and that's where we are now.
So it took me about 1.5 years to change my name. You got to plan that wedding.
So now, you guys have won some awards recently. Can you guys tell us a little bit about some of these awards real quick that I have heard that you guys have won?
We have won a couple. Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Okay, I have my favorite one. May I?
Go ahead.
Okay, so my favorite one is not the most recent one, but it happened about 1 year ago. It was the Robinson Emerging Artist Showcased for a festival in Canada called the Goderich Celtic Roots Festival.
Ooh, cool.
And the reason why that one was so cool is they solicited applications from all over the globe. The point was to find up-and-coming Celtic groups from anywhere in the world, and they said they got 70 or so applications.
Oh, wow.
And they narrowed it down to 5. Yeah, it was really cool. They narrowed it down to 5 groups, and then they opened it up for online voting. And it just so happened that when the online voting opened up for this particular showcase, we were on our honeymoon in Ireland at that time.
Belated honeymoon.
Yes. So we were like, wow, okay, I guess we need to share pictures of us playing music in Ireland constantly.
Oh, yeah.
We can showcase. So it was a really cool time. And we actually ended up being voted the 2023 Robinson Emerging Artist. And so we got to make our first international appearance in August of 2023 at that festival. And it was a really cool experience.
Dude, that is very phenomenal. That's impressive.
That was an absolute blast. We got to basically play on the same stage that Lorena McKinnon played on later that night. Yeah.
We actually performed the same song that she performed later that night. We hope she didn't hear it.
Oh.
I forgot.
Sometimes life just happens, when you have it in your set, you can't prepare these things.
If anyone listening doesn't know who Lorena McKenna is, she's a very famous Canadian Celtic musician, and the song that we performed is called As I Roved Out, and I learned it from her recording when I was a teenager, so that was really cool to see.
Oh, wow, the full
Get to see
circle
her
of
perform in
that.
person.
Oh, my. Yeah,
Yeah.
getting to see your idols and see people that you look up to and idolize is such a phenomenal, different thing for that. Oh, that is so cool.
She was incredible live. Yeah.
But that's my favorite thing. Did you have a favorite one?
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to top that one. However, there's a couple of awards that we've gotten from the city of Roanoke as well.
Those are cool.
I think my favorite one also, it became a reality last year. So we got a grant from the city for the Year of the Artist, and we were tasked with penning a series of original Celtic themed songs and tunes to highlight the geography and history of Roanoke. And that culminated into a show that we called Star Above the Mountain. And that's a pun
cool.
off of so we actually live at the foot of Mill Mountain where the Roanoke Star is located, and it's the world's largest
freestanding electrically lit star. There's like a billion adjectives.
Oh, wow.
But it's the biggest one.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah, but it's
to write a tune called that, world's largest freestanding lit star.
But it's
that would be a long title.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is an iconic part of where we live. And so it's a pun, like I said, off of an Irish tune called Star Above the Garter. So Star Above the Garter, Star Above the Mountain.
We like puns.
Ooh, yeah, sounds like you're very punny people.
Yes. Yes, that's almost to a fault.
You might call us pundits.
Oh, no.
Ooh. Oh, man, let's see. How many can we get throughout the episode? This is going to be amazing. We're going to have to count this
They
out.
call us the Pungent Masters.
Oh, this is phenomenal. This is a new part of the episode that I did not know coming my way. And this is making me so happy right now. I have a friend that, oh my gosh, I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Colby right now, who's going to be rolling in his seats or wherever he is sitting listening to this as he goes through, because he is an extremely punny person as well. So he's going to love this.
I'm glad to hear that we've opened your eyes to this form of humor.
Oh, you got her started now.
It will never end. Yes. I love it.
So anyway,
Josh is
Here's
like, let me reel this back in.
So it culminated into this performance, and we showcased all of these things that we composed at the spot on Kirk, and we did this to a sold out audience. It was a fantastic show, and I think it was generally very well received.
Oh, that was the warmest audience we've ever had. We were really nervous performing it because it was a whole concert of original pieces, and we'd never done that before. But I don't know about you, Josh. Like when we walked out on the stage, I suddenly saw faces I recognized because the people who have come to our shows the most were the ones who bought the ticket. So it was just a sea of people who we already knew, who already knew us, and they were just ready to hear what we needed to give them. And any nervousness just evaporated instantly.
Yeah, it was wonderful. But it was also our first collaboration project. It's the first time that we had done a ticketed event that involved other musicians, aside from just the two of us. So we recruited several musicians from our local Irish session. These are people that we played tunes with for years, that we just really had a good relationship with. And so they took the time to learn all these new songs that we had written.
Oh, yeah.
And perform them on stage with us. That was amazing.
Yeah, because part of what we wanted to do was Star Above the Mountain, like Josh said. We were writing Celtic music about Roanoke, Virginia. Because while Celtic music does come from the Celtic nations like Ireland, Scotland, we all know about those, it's played all over the world. And it's very active in our city. So we wanted to write things about this region where we're actually singing about places we've been to before. Because, we play things like the Roscommon Reel, which most people here in Roanoke have never been to Roscommon, but they have been to Mill Mountain. They have been to Roanoke. Like we wrote the Roanoke Reel. So we were trying to do things like that. And so part of engaging with Roanoke and its Celticness was making sure that we brought some of our fellow musicians on the stage who do this all the time, every week.
So as a result of doing this, we were given 3 awards this year by the
Roanoke.
Roanoke magazine.
Nice. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was also cool. That was an online voting thing.
Yeah,
The people spoke.
they did.
Apparently.
Yeah, it's a big thing that the Roanoke does every year. They have the best of series, and then they have all these different categories that you can vote
You
for.
see them hanging in restaurants. Like, it's a big deal to be voted by the Roanoke.
Yeah, it's Roanoke's stamp of approval.
Yeah. So go ahead and what do we get, Josh? What do we get?
So we got gold for best local musician or band of the year.
That's amazing. And gold is second place. First place is platinum. But the fact that we ranked it all.
Hey,
was
getting
phenomenal.
ranked, being in my hey, we're not going to say there's not a platinum. There's only gold today because we're in the Olympics currently right now, and so it's only gold, silver, and in bronze. So today you're number 1.
Oh, we appreciate it. Well, it's really neat because we're a Celtic duo, and that's kind of
Yeah.
a niche genre. So the fact that we even came in second, like, that was amazing.
We also got gold for best local social media presence. Largely, almost entirely, Julie's doing right there. She's just very good at storytelling.
But you
And promotion.
people, it's wonderful.
We all have our skills that we bring to the table, and that's what makes a good marriage right there too.
Bam.
It's a good team
Bam.
effort. But the coolest thing is the 3rd award was for the best local artwork project, and that was for Star Above the Mountain. And for that, we were given the Platinum Award.
And that award was new this year. So we were the first ones to ever receive it, which is really cool.
That is awesome. Being the honorary very beginning of and the long told story now.
One can hope.
Yeah, so those were our big accolades to date. Well, actually, one other one that I'm very, very proud of. We were given the honor of one of the top bands to watch for 2023 last year by the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast.
Which he's been a fan.
Nice. That's awesome.
I was listening to the Irish and Celtic Music Podcast when we were still at UGA.
I know the podcast actually. I listen to it every so often because it is a very there's a part of the reason why I actually wound up going to Ireland to do my senior year, and that was getting back when I came back, and finding podcasts like that are very important to be able to have. And there will be a link to that podcast, in the sections below for those that listeners. There'll be a lot of links around, and that'll be one of those ones that if you want to be able to get a listen to, there's a lot of great content.
Yeah, if you like this kind of music, you can't beat that podcast for finding independent Celtic musicians that you probably wouldn't have heard of otherwise that are just amazing.
Yeah, Mark Gunn's the man, and he just does so much great work for supporting independent Celtic musicians. And he was one of the very first big podcasts to reach out to us when we released our music.
That's awesome. Now, Josh, you just threw out something very important there of how we met and how we know each other a little bit was University of Georgia. At the University of Georgia, how did we kind of connect in a way?
We were both part of the fencing club. I was primarily a foilist, and you did epee, although it's in that club we all sort of switched.
We were everywhere.
Yeah.
And we have a very good friend, Josh. Another Josh.
Yes, we do.
Josh Dix, another good friend of ours.
I've spoken with that man.
Shout out to Josh. He's out in Colorado.
Yeah. Just got back from seeing him a couple of weeks ago. So.
Yeah. How was the visit?
It was a good visit. He wasn't feeling well when I was out there. He was having some issues, and we were having to kind of battle between that, but we had a good time to sit back and talk and catch up. Always definitely recommend to anyone, if you haven't seen someone in a while, get on a plane, get in a car, go out and visit each other, check in with all your friends. Even if you talk to them once a week, like I do with Josh, it was great to see him in person. That's kind of meant the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really miss him. I talk with him sometimes on the phone, and I should give him another call soon.
Yeah, we're Thursday people. We call on Thursdays and talk. That's where we kind of catch up. That's what kind of shout out to Tuesdays with Maury. Me and Josh are kind of like, we're Thursdays with Josh and Cade. It kind of feels like should be like a Nickelodeon TV show or something. I don't know. Like,
that's awesome. I love that.
But yeah, that's the cool thing. Like, again, this is a great introductory back to learning from friends of were we connecting after years of not having really spoken or kind of connected. And that was really cool. An opportunity of you may not see somebody or talk to someone for years. And this was we're connecting back through what was a sport and what was through college. And that's been over wow, I hate to say it now. It's been over a decade now. And so
it's just going to get worse.
It is. We're just getting older. But that's the cool thing I recommend with anybody within I always say with learning from friends at times is reconnect. You never know where those kind of relationships and stuff can be able to go and how things can be able to kind of grow. And before I digress further, you mentioned a lot of jargon a little bit earlier, Josh, that I kind of want us to be able to, in some vocabulary terms that some people may be a little confused with or a little lost already with. Let's give these people some terms and some vocabulary to add on to their knowledge before we dive deeper into the subject.
Yeah, so in the Celtic music world, there's quite a bit of terminology that you need to know. If you ever find yourself as a musician who is thinking of joining Irish session for the first time, there's examples of certain phrases that you'll come across. One of them is tune sets.
But just the word tune.
Just tune. Yeah, so there's a distinction. So there's tunes and there's songs.
One has words.
Yeah, songs have words. Tune, yeah.
Tune set? Can I explain tune sets? Okay. Since I have interrupted, I am now taking his fact from him, and I will be dispensing it now.
I love this. I love the duo. This is a great dynamic duo right now. I love this.
So if a tune is a piece of instrumental music in Irish music, a tune set is multiple tunes strung together. And this is because Irish traditional music, it really grew up alongside Irish traditional dance. And so a lot of these tunes have dances that go with them or dances that can be done to them. And it will get really boring if you keep playing the same tune over and over and over and over again for the dancers to finish out. So hence the tune set was born. You can string 3, 4 tunes together. The dancers can have their fun and the ear doesn't get bored.
Another thing that you'll hear a lot is the distinction between two types of tunes. One is called a reel and the other one is called a jig. And so the difference between those two has to do with the time signature. So if you are a musician, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you are totally unfamiliar with time signatures, I'll do my best to explain what that is.
We'll feed it out on the microphone or something.
Yeah. So a reel is what is known as 4/4 time. That's common time. So like any kind of pop song that you hear on the radio is most likely going to be in 4/4 time signature. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And then the other side of that, you have jigs, and those are written in 6/8. And the way that I've heard to explain that is if you say pineapple over and over, pineapple, 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 pineapple.
I've never had that explained to
Oh
me.
my gosh, I never have either. That's amazing. Pineapple, pineapple, pineapple. Oh my gosh, it works perfectly. Oh, that's beautiful.
And if you want the same thing for reels, watermelon.
Hey, well, I can give a fact too. I learned in high school band that if you have a string of, it's not a triplet, but it's 5 notes, opportunity or possibility.
Possibility, opportunity. Like it.
That's not Irish. You don't see a lot of strings of 5 notes.
So typically with tune sets, you'll piece together tunes that are all in 4/4 or all in 6/8, either reels or jigs. But sometimes if you have a willing, more experienced group of sessionites, they might go from jigs to reels or vice versa, but it's not as common.
And it can be very thrilling when that happens. Nice change in tempo can get the blood going.
There we go.
So our next vocabulary term would be the term session, which I struggled with when I first started playing trad music, because I thought of a session as being where you sit down and you record, like a music session, a recording.
The recording session, like typical musicians are being together. We're going to be in front of microphones and we're recording.
Right, but that's not what it is. The closest you can call it would be a jam, but it's not a jam. It's kind of a gathering of musicians who play Irish traditional music informally, and you're just there to play music together. Some of these tunes have existed for hundreds of years. It's all memorized for the most part. You have some people who come with music, but these are just in your head. Sometimes you're making it up on the spot, but it's just a spontaneous, joyful release of music, often around a table in pubs with drinks all around, that kind of a situation.
Just a caveat to what she's saying there. When she says make it up, sometimes you might take multiple tunes that you know and put them together. It's not an improv session.
Right. I was thinking about the accompaniment, like if you're a guitarist or something.
Yeah.
Yes, you don't make it up. These are old tunes and they have their paths. And if you start straying from them without knowing them first, people will side-eye you.
Ooh, the strong side eye is a very dangerous thing.
Yes. Politely, of course.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I love this next term you have.
Ah, yes. The next one that is pretty common to hear is the word hup. People will shout hup. And usually it's a marker to musicians to indicate when it's time to go from one tune to the next. There's a specific formula that you follow when you play a tune, and you follow that formula through so that you play the tune 3 times, and then someone will either give you a significant look, they'll stick a foot out to indicate that it's time to change over, or they'll shout hup if no one's looking at you.
Or they'll hit you with a chair.
Oh
Or
man,
that.
That's not
that'd be
traditional.
intense.
They don't do that.
Yeah.
That's modern. That's modern sessions.
I know.
I've heard people shout hup when they're like enjoying the music too, but that's usually like an audience member to the session. When musicians are using it with each other, it's usually a marker.
Last night at the session, I was yelling hup a lot because as the drummer, I was increasing the tempo and I wanted everybody to know that something was about to change.
Ah, that's a smart way of doing it too. I like that.
It's a good term.
Oh, and then the final thing you have on there, you know more about. So I'm not going to touch that. You go for it.
Yeah, so this isn't really a vocabulary term, but it's specifically to help distinguish between two key things in Celtic music. There's a big difference between playing Irish music and playing Scottish music. There's a big stylistic difference. And within Ireland, there's even regional differences. I'm sure this is true of Scotland as well. I'm just a little less familiar with it.
And it's true in America with trad music.
Yeah. So the general rule of thumb is if the Celtic music is kind of a little more flowy, like it's a little more interconnected and it has fewer accents on it, it tends to be more Irish. Now there's exceptions to that, but if you are listening to some Celtic music and it's very like kind of stately or very demarcated with these very strong downbeats, that's going to be most likely a Scottish influenced fiddle style or something like that. And there's also the Strathspey region of Scotland, which is famous for a type of tune called the Strathspey. And what's cool about that is the way that the beats are arranged. If you are playing a drum or if you're playing an accompaniment instrument, you can play it either as a reel in 4/4 or a jig in 6/8, and they both work. It's weird, but it does work.
Ooh,
It's
cool.
a jolly place, the traditions.
If I'm remembering this right, I believe Adam Neely has a whole video on the Scotch snap, which is a very common beat that's used in popular music now, which is heavily influenced by the Strathspey.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful bits of knowledge here, of dropping knowledge to be able to give us some insight and give us some base knowledge before going into the episode. And that is very, very key and very important. So you guys now have been dropped knowledge on. Congratulations. You've graduated. Now, as we continue to go forward here, that we look at it, you have some ground-based knowledge set. Now, as being musicians, and doing all these wonderful things that you do, there sometimes can come stereotypes and misconceptions with your work. Is there any of those that you like to address?
Yeah. So the first one, and this is a very new endeavor for us, but we'd heard for much of our life, the idea that you can't really make a good living as a musician. And I'm very pleased to say, so far we're finding that to not be true.
Knock on wood.
So far, it turns out if you're dedicated to something and you work really hard at it and you find as many ways to engage with it and make it valuable to other people.
You're willing to fail at it because you love it anyway.
Yes, the passion.
Yeah, that you can make it work. So that's been a really cool revelation for us in the past couple of years.
I'd say one of my favorite, the misconception I think of is one that I kind of came into this kind of music with. You think of it as very ancient, old music. It's something of the past. It's not current at all. And it is very old and it's tied to old traditions, but it is so alive. Celtic music is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it like the sessions that we described to you, those are active community gatherings where people are still doing this constantly, and that's just that's just for the joy of it. That's not to record it or anything, but there are people
just the pure
still,
passion.
yes, and there are people who are recording Celtic music every day all over the world. The Godrich Celtic Roots Festival that we mentioned, the year before we were the emerging artists, there was an emerging artist from Japan called Ojizo. Very
cool.
good group playing Celtic traditional music from Japan. It's everywhere, and it's very current. It's not old. It's not dead.
They're incredible. So check them out if you haven't listened to them before.
And they're
Cool.
really good. More people need to know about them.
The next thing, there's also a misconception that if you're not Scottish or Irish, that you have to put a fake accent on for people to enjoy the performance. And it sort of folds into this like bigger idea that you can't make Celtic music authentically as an American. And we found that to just not be the case.
Some people will choose to put on accents. We choose not to.
Yeah, it's a stylistic choice,
Okay.
especially if you're heavily into the Renaissance Fair circuit. There is a culture around doing an accent that is put on for entertainment purposes, and it's a legitimate thing, but it's just something that we early on kind of decided that we didn't want to do. Accents really aren't our thing, at least it's not my thing, so I didn't want to do one.
Yeah.
And your voice is pretty enough where you don't have to put one on.
Oh, look at
Not really.
that.
But like what he was saying about playing Irish or Scottish music as an American, like we frequently get people asking us, "Oh, what's your heritage? Are you Irish? Are you Scottish?" And that's a legitimate question, and we can answer it. But the truth is, you really can engage with this kind of music even if you don't have that
Yeah.
specific kind of heritage. The last album that we made, we called The Knotted Circle, because we were kind of grappling with that exact question. It's actually similar to what I just said about Celtic music isn't old and dead. It's very much alive, thriving. It's
Yes.
all over the world. It's very knotted, and it is a circle that's kind of feeding into itself. And the cultural expression can look in a lot of different ways. It's more complicated than are you Irish, are you Scottish?
And one of the things that we found out when we moved up to Roanoke was there is this very intrinsic connection between Celtic music and Appalachian old time music. I mean, you have a lot of immigrants who are coming through Ellis Island that settled along the Appalachians, usually in the highlands. So the big dividing line is that the Irish and Scottish stuck to the tops of the mountains, and the English and Germans tended to settle in the valleys. So you'll have some places where there's a much more English German population and others where it's a lot more intrinsically Celtic. With that, there was, they're bringing these tunes from Europe over here and playing them and then adding and changing the style around a little bit. And over time, the jigs slow down and become waltzes.
That's
So
your theory.
that's my theory. I can't prove that.
I like
but I'm
this.
pretty
I like
sure-
this.
Hypothesis. Working on experiments for that.
Yeah. Ask the ethnomusicologist to give you the full story on that. That's my theory. But anyway, but the reels largely stay the same. And you have this emergence of a whole new style, this Americana, Appalachian old time style. And you can find the ancestral roots. Like we have a Celtic music that meets on Mondays, and then right across the street on Wednesday nights, there's an old time jam. And they're often playing tunes that we'll find, at the Irish session.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
It's really neat to hear them in different contexts and with different
Yeah.
instruments, because the Irish group has a specific kind of instrument that they use. In the old time group, they'll start using string basses and 5-string banjos and all these things that are not necessarily found in the Irish tradition, but you're still
Yeah.
playing the same tunes. It's part of the same heritage. It just kind of branched off in a different way.
And so what we realized is that we can connect to our Celtic roots through this old time style that is intrinsically American or has become intrinsically American. And that's how we've chosen to engage with Celtic culture. We primarily are interested in preserving that kind of pure Irish and Scottish sound as much as possible, but we do allow some of that old time influence to factor into our playing as well.
That's amazing that you'll be able to spin that and be able to learn and grow from each individual session too. Like that is so phenomenal. That's a good thing. That's a sign of a great musician too.
One that's at least interested in a lot of different things, just being open to learning from all these amazing musicians in this area. We're very, very lucky to have so many amazing like local musicians here.
Well, one of the wonderful things about our Irish session, we know the vocab, you know what a session is. It's like I said, it's not formal necessarily. Sometimes you have closed sessions where there's a specific group of people that meet, but ours is open. So that means anybody on any week could come in and join in the session and bring their instrument and bring their flavor of how they play. Like it might be somebody comes in with a guitar and they have a completely different set of chords that they want to play along. Or last night at our session, there was somebody there who was new and they played a tune that we play all the time, but it had a little bit more of a
Ooh,
just
a
a little bit more of a
bump
pop to it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this is different. And as the drummer, I pick up on that kind of thing, and suddenly I'm playing a different rhythm that I don't normally play. And it's really thrilling, actually.
You're having the different flavors. I like the use that you use there for flavor because it is a flavor. It is.
The only other big misconception I want to address is that, at least for this area of the country, it's pronounced Appalachia, not Appalachia.
There you go. That's a big one. If you're definitely in on the East Coast and West Coast, different people saying it, you definitely can hear it. You know how it comes in.
Either one is technically fine. Like growing up in Georgia, I said Appalachia until I moved up here and was very gently corrected.
You were gently corrected? Oh,
Very
my.
gently.
Ooh, oh wow. Sounds like we had different experiences. So you have this gift that's being given to you at a young age of being musicianship and having it in you. What initially inspired you both to pursue this career in music?
Guess I'll begin with that. You're asking me to go back all the way through time.
Yes, I'm wanting to step back. You could share a little bit of your background, of your musical background as well, if you would like to as well, in order to explain that.
We both have very different paths that took us to Celtic music. When people ask us, do you have Irish heritage, Scottish heritage, they get the story they're expecting from Josh, and they don't get it from me. My first instrument was piano when I was 9, and I was in like the marching band and stuff like that. But I didn't necessarily have family members who played Celtic music. I liked it. My dad had a lot of CDs that I would steal while I was doing my math homework. And so I got used to hearing the sounds. But I didn't necessarily have that cultural connection that people are looking for when they're asking what's your heritage to bring you to this Celtic music. It wasn't until I moved up to Roanoke in 2016. I was in an MFA program for creative writing in Roanoke.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I moved up here and I happened to have an interest in the Irish drum. It's called a bodhran. And so I had one and I brought it with me just so I had an instrument, because I always want a musical outlet. And when you're moving to a new city, all bets are off. Who knows? So I brought this drum with me that I didn't know how to play. And then just like a year into being in Roanoke, my landlady just casually mentioned, oh, you should go find the Irish session.
Ooh,
They're here.
nice.
Yeah. And so I said, okay. And so I did. And so for me, I entered into the Irish session not knowing how to play my instrument. I was welcomed into the circle. And because I wasn't obnoxious about it, they let me learn that instrument within the circle. And within about 5 months, I kind of felt like I knew what I was doing. And within those 5 months, I also met this fine gentleman. We met each other at the session. So as we got to know each other and as we grew closer, we also started playing more music together, decided to form a band, and it's just been really fun. And so that's my path.
I started by joining the orchestra when I was 10 years old. And I took up viola because I'd never heard of it before. But around the same time when I picked it up, so I was learning a lot of classical music, but my grandfather decided on a whim that he was going to learn how to play the bagpipes.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Not to tell anybody he heard them.
Just bought a chanter and started practicing. A chanter is a standard practice instrument that bagpipers will use before they graduate to the full set of bagpipes.
Sounds like you're charming snakes.
Yeah, it's got a mouthpiece, and it's connected to what looks like, the main part of a whistle that has these holes that you cover.
You have no idea how much I'm resisting the urge to go grab the chanter in the other room. I'm not going to do it. Carry on.
So he was learning all these really great Scottish pipe tunes, and so I started learning them from him so we could play together. And that really kickstarted my interest in Celtic music. My mom found some websites that had Celtic music or Celtic sheet music and then MIDI files to accompany it. So I spent all my time learning tunes from there. And yeah, I just really, really got into it from an early age. And I played that kind of by myself, really. I didn't really have an outlet for Celtic music until after college, till I moved up to Roanoke, really. Everything else was self-taught, or, if I went to a Highland Games and got to play with a group of people there.
Yeah.
But I found the session when I moved up here. They were playing at a place called Annie Moore's, and Yeah, they were like, as long as you know the tunes, you're welcome to sit in. So I went for 3 weeks straight. Every Monday night, I sat at the
Wow.
bar and recorded the tunes that they were playing, and I went home and practiced like a maniac until I had about 10 of them down.
Nice.
Yeah, and they let me sit in with them. I played just the small mandolin at the time, and then after I had learned a bunch of tunes and had progressed my job a little more, I was able to afford a full octave mandolin, and that's what I play now.
That's amazing. Now, are there some big influences or inspirations musically or non-musically for you as musicians?
I got a ton of them. How much time do you have?
You know what? As much time as you're willing to give me on this wonderful, beautiful evening.
Weeks, huh?
I think in terms of inspiration for playing the octave mandolin, Lanksty, Andy Irvine was probably the guy that made me decide, it's like, okay, I've got to buy one of these. He's an amazing bouzouki player, and he's been performing since the folk revival in the 60s.
Hmm.
And he's still touring today. Like he's incredible. So he's probably my biggest one, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess it's hard because for me and my drum, it was just kind of loving the sound of it. It's bodhran's not really a front of the pack kind of an instrument. It's it supports. It's in the background. So
You're the heartbeat. Come on.
I am the heartbeat, and it makes such a strange thumping noise. It's so pleasant because you can tune it. It's not like a typical drum you think of where you hit it with two sticks. You hit it with one stick and you use your other hand to bend the drum head. So it can actually have quite a voice to it. So I don't. I heard that drum so much in this kind of music where I was like, that's the sound I want to make. I don't know if I can point to any specific person, although since learning more about Celtic music, Josh turned me on to the band Dervish. The lead singer, Kathy Jordan, has a beautiful voice and she plays the bodhran, so she's definitely one to look at.
Now, there are multiple instruments that you can play. I know that there's multiple that I've seen, but you never know more than what my knowledge that I've been able to hear. What all instruments do y'all play?
You're so much cooler than I am.
No, it's not that. I was just sitting here trying to count how many instruments we have in this house right now.
He's a
We are
collector.
the kind of household where, and I'm not joking, you probably don't have to walk more than 10 feet to find a penny whistle that you
Okay.
need. Yeah, if you're in need of a penny whistle, just go into the next room. It's probably in a jar or something.
Wait, here's the fun thing. So, from the time I learned how to play the viola, I mean, that's an instrument that's tuned in a very specific set of intervals. So each string has the same amount of fingers that you put down before you would move to the next string. I'm trying to think of how to explain this.
You're holding your hand up, and this poor podcast audience can't see.
Aw. But no, he's using it for
My
memory.
hand.
He's using it for memory.
Yeah.
Got to be able to come in.
My point is that the intervals are the same between the strings, and so there's other instruments that you can pick up that are tuned in the same way. So that if you learn the finger pattern on one, it translates directly to the next one. So the same finger patterns that I played on viola translate to violin, and those translate over to mandolin. And turns out it also works for a tenor banjo. So I can pick any of those up and play it with the same finger patterns, and it works.
And it sounds nice.
Yeah, there's a technique difference for the right hand, but you know, at least for getting the bones of the tune down, that part is done.
But you also play the guitar and the sitar and the bouzouki and the bodhran and you sing. I stopped using fingers on my hands because I ran out.
Yeah, one of the things that you find when you really get into this kind of music is that there's a lot of different ways to engage with Celtic music, and my interests are many. So I didn't get bored with playing melody instruments. It's just that I didn't have the ability to learn every single melody that exists out there. So
Oh,
I got into learning accompaniment, and so that took me down the path of working on guitar, learning how to play the bouzouki, which is another form of octave mandolin. That's a whole separate thing I'll get into later. But yeah, it was just kind of fun with learning about different tunings and chord shapes and things like that. So I can nerd about that all day.
And then in contrast, I primarily play my bodhran. I sing, and I am a beginner on two other Celtic instruments, which hopefully we'll bring into our band once I'm a little bit better at them. You have to start
you got
somewhere.
to start at the bottom and work your way
Yeah.
up. Yes.
So when you play the bodhran, you're accompanying everybody, and it's very easy to just go, I don't have to know what's playing. I'm just the drummer. You can play tunes on the bodhran, but I've been picking up the penny whistle, so I have another instrument, but also it lets me actually engage with the melodies in a different way. Penny whistle is the tiny little when you think of the little flute thing that comes straight out of your mouth. It's like a recorder, but not. It's one of the more simple entry-level Irish trad instruments you can pick up. But I'm working on that. And I also last year started learning the Celtic harp, which will take longer, but will be worth it because it's a very beautiful instrument. And that is
Yes,
my
it is.
accompaniment instrument that I'm working on.
Yeah. She just finished her first recital a month ago, 2 months ago.
Depends on when the podcast
Nice.
airs.
Well, this is true because we're currently sitting here in July and it's probably going to be October, November kind of range. So maybe by this point,
I'm going to be so good at the harp.
there we go. There we go. Now, Kinnfolk itself is its own brand, its own business, its own thing that takes a lot to be able to form. How does one go about building this business and this brand? I know a lot of that comes back to Julie. You are very well versed on the social media side of things, but there's a lot more than that goes into just building an empire. I'm going to call it
an empire. May I start with this one? Yeah, it is hard. It's a lot of people don't realize, they see you performing or they see videos of you playing music and they're like, that's all it is. No, there's more to it. If I were to give advice for anybody starting out, I mean, our very first gig that we got, a friend helped us get a gig at our local Highland Games.
Okay.
And in order to perform there, we were like, golly gee whiz, we need a band name. So first step, name yourself. And then we realized really quickly, it's like, if you perform and people like you, you need to give them somewhere to find you later so that you can maintain this relationship. So that's how we got into social media, where we're like, okay, we can direct them to our Facebook or our Instagram or whatever.
Yeah, Facebook made the most sense because it was the most user-friendly for doing kind of independent events and just general social across the board.
Just to age myself, it's the one I understand the most.
I'm with you on that one.
The Facebook, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where we started, and we've just been feeling our way through how being a music business works. Neither of us has any kind of business degree background or anything, but as I mentioned earlier, I do have 2 degrees in creative writing. So I really enjoy using social media as a way to tell stories about either us and our path as musicians, or about Celtic music, or about other interesting things in Celtic culture. I find it to be a really interesting way to be able to kind of bring people along into the kinfold, as it were. That's what we call it.
I love that.
But yeah, it can be a very creative thing, social media. It's a lot of work. You have to kind of, if it can be as little or as much work as you want it to be.
True.
But yeah, if you want to kind of get your social media rolling, you have to figure out what it wants to be fed, what the algorithm wants to be fed, and kind of get that pattern going. But it's been really enriching for us.
Yeah, social media is just one part of it too, because that's what's doing the most heavy lifting for your marketing side, but also making sure that after a show that you're staying around and talking with people and handing out your business cards, which if you are a business and you don't have business cards, you should get them because they're worth their weight in gold.
Yes, they are.
Remember you.
Yep.
I wasn't sold on them at first. I'm very much a convert now.
I'm big on stickers. I like stickers. That's a big one for me too. Like with QR codes, giving somebody a QR code too, sometimes is really easy, like as well. That's what I've learned. Everybody has their own specialty.
They're a little thing. Someone gave me this beautiful little sticker of the state of West Virginia with little mushrooms growing off of it. And I was like, what a pretty piece of art. And then I noticed, it has her Instagram handle on it too. Smart.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've heard of people going back to talking about Mark Gunn. He was doing enameled pens for a while that had QR codes to his music.
And the reason for that is another side of being a music business is sad reality. The way that people listen to music has changed. So whereas musicians in previous decades could really make a good part of their living selling physical CDs, it's more challenging nowadays. So what Josh was describing is people have come up with all kinds of creative ways, flash drives, stuff like that. This particular musician makes enamel pens, and they come with a download of the music, but you have an object as well. And I think that's incredibly clever.
That is extremely intelligent.
Right. You have to get creative with that kind of thing. So I guess that's another thing, pivoting with technology.
Yeah.
And that's just the marketing side. Like, that's getting your name out there so people know who you are. Then you have to sell yourself to the venue, and then you have to negotiate the price that you feel is equivalent to the value that you're providing.
Through it all, the imposter syndrome, the imposter syndrome.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I run into that
Our
constantly.
favorite companion.
Oh my gosh. The worst enemy of all.
Yeah. So there's marketing, there's sales, and then kind of tied in with both of those things, you have the website as your central hub for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Which takes a while to actually get a website.
Right.
Mhm.
So when you start selling merchandise through that, you also become support and shipping fulfillment too. You know, I got two orders I need to send out tomorrow. So.
Sure, it's complicated, and we're only 2 people, but we're doing the best that we can.
That's all you can ask.
Here's the thing though, is like, if you just get started, the problems present themselves, and then you just solve the problem as it comes. And then you get smarter about it. So when the problem comes around again, you know how to deal with it a little better.
Everybody ends up with their own different paths. Like
Yeah.
different problems present themselves, and you have a different little ecosystem of things that you've been working on or working through, and you find your solution is there. They're there already. Just prune them.
Yeah. It's been a really interesting ride. Like, I didn't know how to make an LLC a couple of years ago, and now we have one. So, yeah.
It's cool stuff.
Knowledge is power. That's the nice thing that we have in our hands now in comparison to like 15 years ago of like, we have such access to technology to be able to learn how to make that LLC, learn how to be able to code a website to be able to learn how to be able to come up with all these different ideas. And then we still have our communities of going to the Highland Games and going to all these other places and connecting in with other artists and seeing what they're doing and trying to be able to grow your communities. And that's every bit about that changes your brand daily.
Yeah, absolutely. Spoken like someone with a business.
Ah, only three. Only three.
No matter what you do, though, you have to keep your central vision for why you're doing what you're doing.
Yes. Yes.
And that sort of thing is like, our goal in life is to promote and encourage people to engage with Celtic music and Celtic culture. That's why we do what we do, you know, and keeping that thought in the back of our mind, to the extent that we're able to do that while we're doing the tasks that we're doing, has consistently given us the best result.
Yeah, and like one of my sub goals, it's kind of similar to that, but it's a little bit different. It's just when you're performing in front of an audience, and you can even see it happening. Somebody is connecting with you on a level that's a little bit deeper than I like this music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important too.
Yeah.
Whether or not they come up and tell us afterward, they frequently do. But just knowing that music can change things in people's lives. You have no idea where they are when your music hits them. So I think that's also really neat to be able to do.
How do you approach songwriting in this whole entire process, and where do you draw inspiration from to be able to continue every single day to go out and perform and play these songs, whether you're learning them or whether you are creating them?
So I think we do 2 things as Kinnfolk. We are relatively new songwriters, and that is been a wonderful process. Prior to that, we are also, when you have folk musicians, a lot of it is kind of archival, finding old things and performing them and keeping them in front of people. So a lot of the stuff we perform is not our own. It's stuff that is way past copyright, a couple hundred years old. And that's a different sensation than performing things that we write. I don't know if you want to comment on that. Like you want to jump in on it.
I think that's exactly right. Is on the one hand, when we're doing the trad side of things, we're acting as ambassadors from people that came before us and trying to present it in a way to where, you know, today's audience can engage with it and
enjoy.
Yeah, it's a form of living history in a way.
Yeah.
In a real way. But the songwriting process it's a whole different beast. There's a lot more vulnerability to that because you're sharing some of what you've created yourself with people. And obviously you hope that they like it, but I mean, you're just kind of you're presenting it and putting it out there and just seeing how people react, and that influences directly how you're going to write your material moving forward.
Yeah. We mentioned our Star Above the Mountain project that we did for it was called an Art Matters grant funded through the City of Roanoke and the National Endowment of the Arts. And we proposed this project in which we write a bunch of music about Roanoke. And then they accepted us and we're like, oh, let's become songwriters now, shall we? So, which was great. We were ready to do it. It was a natural step. So we had our topics already. We knew we were going to write about Roanoke. Now we spent actually several months just kind of going around Roanoke and learning things, talking to people, asking people, hey, what's the secret thing that you think people should know about?
Oh my goodness, too. It was like drinking from a fire hose with all the information we took in.
We should keep writing things based on that stuff.
It
You
became
should. That'd be
overwhelming.
amazing.
Yeah, it was overwhelming to to choose what to focus in on because you can't give a whole picture of a city in, 10
No,
10
you
pieces of
can't.
work.
Not one bit. And as far as what inspired things, like something as a beginner songwriter that I always wonder, and I'm sure a lot of people wonder this and get a lot of like starters anxiety over it, is which comes first, the words or the melody?
Ooh,
And
yeah.
the answer for me for the songs that I wrote was it varies. And whoa, that's the most helpful answer ever. Sorry, guys. It varies. I wrote a song about, I wasn't even trying to write a song that became The Waters Rising. We had a flood in May of 2020, and we were all stuck inside, if you will recall.
Oh yeah. Remember well.
So any change in the environment was fascinating. So I'm like, Josh, I'm going on a walk. It's flooding outside. Which I'm already fascinated with floods. So I went walking around the Roanoke River, and it was just fascinated.
Don't forget your floaties.
Oh,
The river was literally like, I am not exaggerating. It was up at the top of the trees, like the
oh wow!
little
You can see the little
leaves were
leaves left.
sticking out of the water. It was crazy. And then when the waters receded, you would see all these weird things stuck in the branches, like shoes.
That you would never
Like things
see
that had just
before.
been
Yeah,
swept
it's
down the
washed
river.
down.
Yeah, so like for that kind of thing, I just came back and I think I had been listening to a different tune for a couple of on repeat a couple of days before, and I was just like, I have a feel. And I didn't come up with words in that moment, but I came up with the melody, which I was then able to work with, which was really cool. Josh, you wrote a lot of tunes inspired by Roanoke.
Yeah, I'm more of a melody guy, I
Mm.
think. My gift is not really in words so much as it is
Oh,
being able to
hey.
pick out melodies.
You wrote the Hat song, and it has some really lovely lines in it.
Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much. That was inspired by real events. We can get into that later, but no, what I like to do is I like to sit really quietly in a room and I'll just like listen for like snatches of melodic phrases that kind of enter my head. And then if I find something that I like, I'll pick up an instrument and just see what it does. And if it goes anywhere or if I can kind of piece it together with the shape, because sometimes I'll use shapes on a fretboard to do melody
Okay,
writing, and sometimes that works.
I like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to write. Like, for example, one of the things I ended up changing the name of this melody, but I was trying to write a song about this wall. I would go running for really long distances, and I knew that I was at the end of my run when I would reach this large retaining wall at the end of the greenway. And so I tried to draw a shape of what that wall looked like on the fretboard, and it turned into a tune eventually. I repurposed it later on, but it was just one example of how you can use that technique to get phrases that you wouldn't come up with on your own, just using theory.
Now, are there any projects or secret things that you guys are working on that you are excited about releasing or coming up with?
Yes.
This one's not a secret, especially given what we've been talking about just now. But Star Above the Mountain culminated in a live performance. That was the point of the Year of the Artist. Whatever you were working on, it had to be some kind of a public showcase. It had to include people in a public place. So we performed that to a live audience on June 30th, 2023. But then we had all of this new music. And so we went into the recording studio earlier this year and are currently finishing up the tracks on our next album, which is called Star Above the Mountain and is a Roanoke, Virginia concept album, pretty much. Oh, that made it sound so pretentious.
It's a concept album. Love it.
Celtic music written about Southwest Virginia.
Nice.
And we are currently in the throes of putting that together. We're getting our tracks back. We're gonna the song I was just telling you about that I wrote, "The Waters Rising," is gonna be our first single. By the time you hear this podcast, it might be out already. Go find us. But we're very excited about that process because before now, our previous two albums, we did trad songs, like what we mentioned before, songs that we did not write, but that we really liked or wanted to present to people for whatever reason. There were a couple of originals on the second album, but this is the first one where it's almost purely original. There's a couple of trad things on there.
There's two things on there that are traditional, but
we're excited about that.
We have one other project that's in the works right now. At the time of this recording, we're still working on the final touches, but we will also be leading a tour group through Ireland next year. We signed on, we signed on with the tour company to lead a group of people and see the sights in Ireland and check out the session scene while we're out there.
And we're really excited about that because I mentioned very quickly earlier in this interview, but we went to Ireland for our honeymoon back in 2023. It was 2 years after our actual wedding because we got married in the middle of COVID. But
honeymoon can come at any time. That's the thing in my opinion. Anytime.
Because we delayed, that's why we got to go to Ireland for 3 weeks. We got to save up. So we've already kind of explored the pubs. We chose the places we visited based on where the good music is, and we were there for 21 days, and we sat in with 22 sessions. So we were hitting more than one session per day. So when we lead our tour group next September 2025, we're definitely going to hunt down the good music again. And we hope we get some people coming along with us who are interested in that part of Ireland.
Yeah, but there will be a lot of other fun activities that we'll do during the day too. It's not going to specifically only be relegated to session music.
There will be so many castles.
Yeah. Castles,
so many
tours,
things to see.
Things to drink.
Possibly a carriage ride at some point. We'll see.
We should stop talking about the details because it's not confirmed yet.
Oh man, yeah. It's like now you're setting out an emotion of like, you're drawing me in, and I'm like, ooh, okay. And now you're giving details, and I'm like, okay.
For those listening at an unknown point in the future, in order to verify anything and everything that we said, visit us at kinnfolkmusic.com.
Yes.
Get the real details.
We'll also have a link to the website on the tour guide page with all the details there. So anyway.
That's awesome. Now, what inspired you really to like get involved in preserving this traditional Celtic music?
I really got into it just because my family was really into it. I mean, my grandpa was really the leader for a lot of that. When he got into bagpipes, my younger cousin and my uncle both took up Celtic fiddling. It was he had studied classical violin in school, and she was like 5 years old at the time and just getting started. And so he figured, oh, this is something that we can all do together. So my family would get together and we would play tunes when we would visit each other. So I guess we kind of had those household sessions. And that was a lot of fun. And that's an important way for me to connect with family. And that was a really special part of my upbringing. So I wanted to preserve it for that reason too. But I've just always really loved Celtic music, and it's something that I want to preserve because it brings me a lot of happiness, and I hope it does for other people. So if the music that we produce can do any fraction of that for other people, it's worthwhile.
As I mentioned, I came to Celtic music very differently than he did. I had just moved to a new city in order to pursue a degree in creative writing, and I found the Irish traditional community while I was doing that. So I think if you're asking me why it's important to preserve the culture, why I'm passionate about it, I think I came to it at just the right time because I was graduating from a program in creative writing in which I had been encouraged to explore everything that stories can do, everything that nonfiction witnessing of things, writing things down, the power of just being able to witness something and capture it. So I'm emerging from a creative writing program at the same moment I'm discovering trad music. And I do think that that was on my mind because something like this kind of music, it can exist if I mean, we have recordings now, like once it's recorded, it exists, but this kind of music really only exists if people continue to play it. And that's what's so fascinating about it.
Yeah, it's a living style. It requires that social aspect, playing it in real time and sharing that experience with other musicians and other people who are, who are observing and listening and enjoying the music.
The music, would you say, help preserves the cultural heritage and identity in one way as others can be able to do as well as music can be just as powerful as anything else? That's a big question.
It's a big question. And I'd say you could probably say that about any culture. Like any culture, like you can look at the arts are ways of understanding the world and ways of communicating both to yourself, to your children, communicating who you are to people outside of your group. So I definitely say music is a big part of that,
Yeah.
amongst other things.
I think when a musician composes a piece, a song, a tune, a poem, or whatever, they're sharing a part of their soul with you. And I think when you see something like the music of Ireland and Scotland, the body of music that many composers, many musicians have produced, you kind of see the collective soul of that culture. And I think you just sort of see the collective beauty of that after a while. You know, you see what the core of that culture is really about. And I think that that's something worth preserving.
I agree. Whenever you can find something so beautiful and so just tight knit and it creates its own community, creates its own people. And that's what I think is culture itself wrapped up in a bottle, something that is worth preserving and worth carrying on. And that could be as simple as a piece of cloth, to be as intricate as a jig, to be very much like it could be anything. And music being able to provide that in all cultures around the world get to have that joy of because music is so regionalized, but yet can blossom and create its whole entire new genres and new millennia's worth of music that come out from it from generation. Very
Yeah,
well said. I love the way you said that.
thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's something that kind of came to me while we were touring around because as you go to these different regions, I think if you wanted to hear the differences in the regional styles, you would probably have to stay in a place for a month or two, maybe, and just go to sessions every day until you've really gotten the area style in your ear. Like the Kerry region of Ireland is well known for its polkas, for example.
Yep.
So if you're in any of the pubs over there, you're probably more likely to hear more of that type of tune. But like when we were down in Cork, we had a lot of French musicians that came across from the Brittany region of France. And the Brittany region of France is a Celtic nation as well. And they have their own style of playing tunes. And it's very intricate. It was very cool to listen to. It was one of my favorite places that we went to.
Now, have you run into any challenges in preserving this music, and how have you kind of about overcoming some of those?
I think to the extent that we have challenges, they're very small because this group of people, like the culture around playing Celtic music is very welcoming. And I think that there's a latitude for a lot of different kinds of ways to express Celtic music. I think that there are certainly rules, like when you join a session,
Okay.
there's a certain amount of respect that you have to show that session before you sit down. Like you don't just sit down and start thumping out chords and expect it to be okay. There is a certain set of norms that you're expected to follow, and as long as you can respectfully observe those before joining in, you're generally okay. I think that's fair to say when you say.
Yeah, I'm still trying to think if we, as Kinnfolk, have really encountered anything that I would call challenges. Like I'm sure we will. But I don't know. I mean there's that old question of when you're dealing with something that's an oral tradition or is a living history kind of tradition, what happens when you record it? Like, what is there a real version of a tune or of a fairy tale, like an official version? Like that's an interesting conversation to get into. It's like, in what way are you preserving? Which version of this are you preserving? And are you calling it the definitive version? Because you probably shouldn't. The ability to record music has definitely changed what these things are and become.
Yeah, there's definitely heavy debate on how certain things were historically played. I mean, there's certain collections of tunes, like massive collections of tunes that everyone references, that it's a snapshot in time of how those tunes may have been played, and they also may have been standardized in a way to make them easier to read as sheet music.
How that one person decided to write them down. Yeah.
Right. So, like, here's a good resource. If you ever go to thesession.org, that's probably the best, the most well-known database of tunes in the world.
It's really old too. You'll find like forum posts from 20 something years ago. It's ancient.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it, but that shows how strong it is.
Exactly. But anytime you look up a tune, there's going to be what are called settings, different settings of a tune. And all that is, they're just different variations of how people made stylistic changes to certain parts of the tune. And it could be a single note, it could be a whole phrase. It really, really varies, but it just goes to show you that way is probably a little bit more representative of how people have always approached this type of music, because 10 people could play the same tune 10 different ways. And so this just gives you a forum to put down the way that you understand it. Yeah, I guess that's one challenge, is kind of understanding, like, when you're connecting to these things historically, how close are you to getting that authentic representation of it, and how much of it is a historical snapshot at one point in time.
And then when we engage with it, it's like, how are we engaging with it as a historical object, but also giving it our own breath of life? Like, how are we appreciating it for what it is while also making it our own?
Yeah.
That's a fun balance to strike.
That can be challenging, because anytime you approach that, you want to do it with some amount of humility to the tradition, to do that as authentically as you possibly can, but also recognizing that if you choose to make stylistic changes of some sort, that you can be open to some level of criticism by, people who think it should be a certain way. And that's fine.
That's true.
Just one way to engage with it.
That's, the whole thing of collaboration and trying to find that little like niche, and being able to find that being able to work with others and being able to kind of find that, and especially with music that's been around for hundreds of years, to be able to do so. And that's as a continual collaboration, which leads to my next question that collects with collaboration. Like, how do you collaborate with other individuals or other organizations to help preserve this amazing music?
I'm so glad you asked that.
Go on.
Well, within our community, we've partnered very heavily with Roanoke Arts Commission. They're the ones that gave us the platform for doing Star Above the Mountain.
They're doing a lot for art within Roanoke, music, visual art, dance, theater, stuff like that.
Yeah. And they were the ones that managed to get funding from the National Endowment for the Arts so that artists like us could do these types of projects. It wasn't just us, it was a whole slew of other creative people that did all these fantastic, they did visual art, there's sculpture, I believe there was some poetry. Yep. As well. Basically any kind of medium of art was open for this, and we saw some really amazing results come from that initiative.
Yeah, it was really neat, and they're carrying it on. Can't thank them enough for that sort of thing. I'd say other ways that we partner and collaborate to keep the culture on is just participating in the session. We talk about the session so much, but it's the heartbeat of the trad community here in Roanoke. And there are a couple of different sessions. There's the one that's every Monday here in Roanoke, but then if you go one town over, there's one that's on the second Saturday. You go another town over, that's one that's on the third Saturday. So making sure that you go to those and you see the other people there and you play with them, and they are different because it's different compositions of people.
Different groups, yeah.
Yeah. So just making sure you keep participating. One of the neatest things that's happened since I joined the session is I was the youngest person there. Maybe Catherine, that we knew first, was younger than me, but generally it was people 60s and up. But recently, there's so many new faces, new young faces in the session, and it's really important because as a living art, if people aren't joining the circle and learning it, it's not going to keep going. So having people in their 30s and their 40s showing up is really cool, actually.
And if you're very new to this circle and you're very new to getting into Celtic music, are there any organizations or literature or groups that you say, hey, go check this out, go read a little bit about this, that you want to recommend to people?
Session.org.
Yeah, I think the session.org is probably your best place just to find a repository for all these different tunes. But really, I mean, just going to YouTube or Spotify and just listening to a lot of different Celtic music, like a lot of different bands, and seeing what style of Celtic music do you like?
I have one.
Yeah.
The Online Academy of Irish Music.
Yes.
They have classes. They've put classes from experts on their instruments just up for beginners or intermediate or advanced, whatever level you are. Hundreds of classes. That's where I was learning tin whistle. You were taking some of the guitar classes from there, right?
I was.
It's a subscription service, but you have access to everything once you're in there. That's a very good place to go if you want to learn more about this.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
if I can make a shameless plug, we're also an organization that helps preserve Celtic music. I started teaching music this year, so I've taken on some students locally, but I also offer classes over Zoom. That's primarily for mandolin, guitar, and bodhran.
Yeah, and if you just want to learn more about the stuff, another shameless plug. I really enjoy taking people along on the journey on our social media. I stay very active. I'll film in our sessions so you see what it's like. I'll broadcast any Celtic events that are happening around our region, lift up other Celtic musicians that have their own bands around the area. So just kind of finding, finding places like that on the internet. As we mentioned, other groups on our Facebook pages, go follow them, see what they're up to. It's a little web. Once you start following the threads, you start learning all kinds of things.
I love that. There's been so much that we've talked about today. Are there some things that maybe that I've overlooked that you would like to be able to cover?
Yes. I have two things I want to talk about.
See? You can tell which one prepared and which one's just here for the conversation.
So one of my musical heroes, Victor Wooten, talks about music.
Yes. Oh, one of the greatest bass players of all time. Sorry.
Yes. I actually saw him in Athens playing with the Flecktones, and it was my brain exploded.
I can believe that.
Oh yeah. Highly recommend.
He's only just put it back together.
No, I haven't. I'm still looking for at least 3 pieces.
There's still pieces missing.
You changed states. They're gone.
But a reason why I bring him up is he talks about music being like a language, and that's that idea that I've really tried to take to heart in my musical journey. Kind of in the same vein, when we're looking at Celtic music and culture, one of the big things that both Ireland and Scotland are making efforts to preserve is their language, the Gaelic languages, or the Gaelic languages if you're from Scotland. We've been trying our best to learn and study up on both of those languages.
It's a process.
Yeah,
it is. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's very challenging. It's a beautiful language, and it's done in the service of helping us learn some of these songs that are in those languages too.
And again, to do it with respect, to be able to engage with it in a way that we're actually singing. We care about the history behind it.
Someone said this at a Highland Games, and I don't know where they got it from, but they said bad Gaelic is better than good English, something like that.
Okay.
Hey. Okay.
The idea being is like, we don't care if it sounds, good or bad. We just want you to speak it.
I actually had a native French speaker tell me the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
I think that's the big thing. Whenever you go to a country or go to a location, it's if you cannot speak the language, you're at least trying and you're wanting to engage, and that's heavily respected anywhere you kind of be able to go.
Yeah, I think people can tell where it's coming from if you're making at least a decent effort to be respectful and use the language in a humble way. So, yeah, that's one of the things that we're hoping to preserve. But there's a ton of other groups out there. Sean Healy comes to mind. He's done an amazing job for Runa. Yeah, that's a great example.
These are both Americans who have taken great efforts to be able to pronounce either Scots Gaelic or Irish Gaelic.
Yeah.
Or Canadians, sorry, North Americans, English speakers.
Yeah, North American.
Mhm.
There you go. There's a catch-all term.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's been really good efforts out there to help revitalize both of those languages, which are quite frankly at risk of dying out. But there have been such good efforts to preserve them that there's actually more people learning the language non-natively than there are native speakers.
For Welsh, isn't it like only 10% of the population speaks
It's a very small amount.
something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I know in Ireland, there's still small little sections that are still being able or working really hard to be able to preserve the Gaelic language. Like you go out into Dingle, where they do a really good job of trying to like get, if you're in there, you need to be speaking, or the signs are going to be in Gaelic, or to be able to try to preserve it as deep as possible. And so there's like, yeah.
That was something we noticed while we were over there. All of the street signs were in Gaelic first, English second. And I was like, cool.
Yeah, and getting into some of the schools, they actually do sections as well of the school. If you walk into this part of the school, you only can be speaking Gaelic. If you speak another language, you're asked to leave that section of the school in order to help preserve the language.
Immersion. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
That's why I can't speak my Spanish anymore.
Yeah, and we're hoping with these continued efforts that we'll see a revitalization of both the Irish and Scottish dialects of the Gaelic languages come back.
There are a lot of musicians doing really good work with that too. Julie Fowlis, got mentioned her, yeah.
Yeah, actually, she's the one that got me interested in learning Scottish to begin with. So, yeah, but that's the only thing I wanted to say about the language. So, anything else you want to add?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
that's very important. There's so many aspects to Celtic music because we mentioned the music itself, but we've gotten into the language, we've gotten into the dance, we've gotten into the history. So much of it is story preservation.
It is.
This is a battle that happened, and we're gonna maintain this story of it, and people are going to sing about it 500 years later.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really cool.
It is phenomenal.
Yeah, but it's not the only way that Americans even engage with the culture anymore. There's fashion choices too. Yeah, I'm not getting get out of this without talking about kilts.
Kilt fan.
Big kilt fan. I remember the first day I put one on. I was very, very embarrassed, and then by the end of the day, I was like, I got to get more of these. This is awesome.
How many kilts do you own?
4 right now. Actually 5. I just bought a new one.
Oh, that's true. You were going to wait to get your next one until you reached this one life event.
Yeah, I'll talk about the life event here. Sure.
Maybe by the time this airs, who knows?
Yes, maybe.
Ooh, possibly.
Probably next year. So I had this very specific Irish county tartan that I'm in love with. And once I have paid off all of my student loans, I'm going to buy that tartan in an 8-yard kilt. And I'm hoping that based on our current trajectory, I should have all that paid off by next March.
And now you said it in frent of people.
Now I've
got to do it.
It's now in place, set in stone.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's one of those realities of being millennial aged people trying to forge your way forward with your own business. To bring it back around to that, a lot of us have a student debt. We're doing our best.
We do the best we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an example though of a cross-cultural influence, kind of helping restore maybe some lost culture.
Kilt wearing.
Yeah. Because I mean, the kilt wearing is still a thing in Scotland for formal events. And from what I've heard, I hear conflicting stories. I've never been to Scotland, but I have a ton of friends who have gone over there and have reported back. And so I hear both that kilt wearing's not really a thing up there, and I've heard that it is still a thing up there, but it's mostly for formal events. And then I've also heard people be like, don't listen to them. People still wear kilts. So I don't know what to believe.
You have to go investigate it yourself. Report back.
Right.
I've seen a fair amount when I was in Edinburgh. I did see a fair amount just in casual wear walking around. But that's again more of a major city, though. So you never know.
Right, and that's
that
where
could be
all
touristy.
the international flights land.
Exactly. It could. I didn't get to get out into the big outside of the areas, but I got to get into Edinburgh, and I did see a fair amount.
Okay, thank you for your eyewitness account.
I'll give you mine.
Well, see, what we heard was when we went to Ireland is like if you wear a kilt in Ireland, it's not a big deal, but they're going to know that you're a tourist.
Mm-hmm.
But you wore a bright green rain poncho. They knew you were a tourist.
I don't, it's fine.
This is true. The poncho gives you away. They don't believe in ponchos.
It was
it sure was wet.
You didn't get hit by any cars. They saw him a mile away.
Hey, safety first. Safety first.
I love that poncho. I'll wear it again. But yeah, so kilt wearing is a heavily cultural thing, and it's a way for Americans to connect with their Scottish clan ancestry. by wearing the tartan of that clan, or if they don't want specifically to do that, but they still want to wear kilts, there are a ton of other designs that are out there that are just sort of generic styles that you can wear. Like there's an American Heritage one, there's a new one, there's Appalachian folklore. There's just universal tartans for Scotland and Ireland, Wales. So
there's one for the Blue Ridge.
yeah, there is.
Oh, wow.
There's one for the band Albanock. Some bands have their own tartan.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. Anybody can make and register a tartan, and there are new ones being made all the time, which feeds back into Celtic culture isn't old and dead. It's still being made every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
With the increased popularity in Celtic festivals and Highland games, there's more and more people wearing kilts every year. I mean, USA Kilts has done an amazing job for promoting that as well. So, thanks to efforts from them, that's becoming more popular. I think I've sold like 4 people on kilt wearing since we've started. So
probably more. The shy ones are like, that guy's cool. I want a kilt now.
Nothing brings me more happiness than someone showing up and being like, hey, look, I got a kilt finally. It's like, yes, high five. Good job.
The
Don't jump
joys.
too high.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Beware of breezes.
Now, we've discussed a lot of nice words, wisdom, knowledge. Is there any other last minute words of wisdom that you want to be able to bestow upon us?
If there's something that you really love doing and something that you want to say that you've tried at least once, please do it. Like, don't spend the rest of your life wishing that you could go out and start a business like this, or become an artist, or whatever it is. Just try it. Like, start on something and like be okay with failing at it for a little while, because eventually you start succeeding, and you could succeed or fail at the current job you're at. So why not try it by doing something on your own terms?
I love that.
Okay, I think I have mine. This would be, first of all, maybe not applicable to everybody. This is just what helped me. But for anybody who is learning a new instrument or who wants to try something new but is nervous, particularly with instruments, people can hear you practicing them. Just go for it. Just go for it. Like, if you're singing, if you're trying, if you're shy and you're trying to be quiet and you're not confident, it keeps you from moving your air. The more comfortable you can be being loudly bad at something, the sooner you will become good at it, I think. At least it was for me. Like, if you're trying to learn a musical instrument, you can't keep it from people forever. People will hear you practicing. So the sooner you can kind of adopt that confidence and own that you're playing the instrument, even if it's not up to your standards, I think the sooner you'll start really falling in love with it.
Another amazing piece of wonderful golden wisdom right there. Now, Kinnfolk here, give us some lovely promotion here. Where can we locate you? Where can we find you? Give us some information here.
Well, we have a website, which is kinnfolkmusic.com, correct?
Yes, it is.
And we are on, you can find our music on pretty much anywhere you look for music. So you can find it on all your major streaming sites. You can download it from the Apple Store, whatever you need. I think we also sell downloads on our website if you want to support us directly.
We have high quality download files for that too.
Yes,
so.
And we sell CDs as well. So we'd love to, you've spent all of this time listening to our various wandering stories. If you want to hear our music, it's out there on the internet. And please do come and find us on social media. We keep a fun community. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We are going to be back on TikTok, I promise.
Yeah, go ahead and follow us there. We'll have some more stuff.
A lot of people follow us on TikTok. We just haven't used it in a while. It's a big shame.
Sometimes it cycles. It cycles.
It is.
And Ben's in town.
We are on Men's in Town. So yeah, just come for us on your favorite platforms. And come along on the journey with us. We definitely don't just talk about ourselves. We like to bring you along into Celtic music culture.
Yeah. We love hearing people's opinions on Celtic music, things they like to hear, things they've seen. So it's a great community, and yeah, we love hearing from people.
Yeah.
And we live stream once a month too.
That's true. And another that ties into the other thing that I forgot to tell people about. If you do find artists or musicians, then you enjoy what they're doing, the best way that you can support them directly is Patreon.
Yes.
We started doing our monthly Facebook live stream because our patrons asked for them, because so many people who follow our social media pages are not local to Southwest Virginia. And so they asked if we could do an online concert once a month. And we said, yeah, sure. Thank you. So we are able to do that because of our patrons on Patreon. And I encourage, if there's anything that you enjoy, independent creators, it really does make a difference if you support them.
Huge difference
Yeah.
for us.
Doesn't have to be us. Go find someone else. Do you have a Patreon?
I do have a Patreon page which you can be able to go on and actually buy a t-shirt now. I have merch. Oh my gosh. I never believed I would have a t-shirt.
Support Cade. It makes you feel good. It makes him feel good. And he gets to keep making this wonderful podcast because of your support.
Now, speaking of music here, do you guys want to perform a song or two maybe?
Sure.
Suppose we can.
Yeah, give me a second. I got the mandolin in the case over here.
Can you hear the very heavy rain in the background?
No,
Slash, would you like to? I can open the window.
I can't hear. Yeah, add it in. Add anything in. I can't hear anything other than your guys' voices. I can't hear anything in the background outside of that.
We'll get the instruments.
Yeah, let's keep that.
I think we might need to pull out the chairs so we have room to move around, actually. Set change. That's it. We should do something that they can't find on the streaming site. Something that we only do when we're live.
Oh, the water's rising.
Dealer's choice. Tell us what you're gonna play, and then you have the floor.
We could try that. That one's newer. Okay, we're gonna do one of our originals, I think. This is not out yet, though it might be by the time this airs. If so, it's going to be the first single off of our new album, Star Above the Mountain. This is the one that I talked about earlier, where I walked along the river and it was flooding all of the trees. It's called The Waters Rising, and we follow it up with a traditional Breton tune called Gwendol that I did not write, but I wish I had.
Oh, the clouds rolled in and the rain came down and it rolled the river into the town. And it raised on up as it came on down and it washed o'er the streets of town. Well, the water's rising, blur in the horizon. See the rain blow by and roll toward the streets of town. River lifted up like a lover's bone, with a piece of the bridge as it pushed along, and it brushed the stone, joined the throne, and it rose above the streets of town. Well, the flowers drowning, streams and green winds brawling, oh, the rain came down and washed over the streets of town. Well, the water's rising, dogs and
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sitting back and doing that. With that, I mean, amazing. Thank you for performing that and giving us an insight into this music that we've talked about for the past hour and a half now, this amazing moment, and giving your time in your evening to be able to sit down and have this wonderful, amazing conversation. Josh and Julie, thank you so much. Kinnfolk, this has just been an amazing time. Thank you for coming on and spending your evening with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Kate. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And for those that would like to be able to come on and contact me, reach out with me, my email is Cade, which is spelled CADE at learningfromfriends.com. I have a Facebook page as well, which is going to be the same as my Twitter or X, as some people want to be able to call it now, because that's what it is, I guess. I've got a LinkedIn, a Facebook, an Instagram, and Facebook, all under Learning from Friends podcast. I do have a Patreon page as well, listed as Learning from Friends podcast. If you'd like to be able to go on, purchase a t-shirt, or just donate at whatever level draws your comfort. And if you just want to reach out, say hi, check in, share wonderful stories, and share little events, do so. Please reach out to these lovely two individuals and spread the love of music in the worldwide. And as we get ready to leave here today, my name is Kay Curtis, your tour guide, this lovely adventure that I like to call Learning from Friends. And most of all, don't forget, let your curiosity fly high.